Good morning, everybody, or afternoon or evening, depending on where in the world you are. My name's Michael Woods, and it's very exciting for me to be able to host you today and welcome you all to this briefing. Pharmaxis has a long history as a listed company, but a recent significant expansion on its clinical development program. There's a number of really exciting value inflection points that are likely to occur over the next 12 to 18 months, particularly focused on lysyl oxidase inhibition and the application of that to three cancers, all of which have very poor prognosis. That's bone marrow cancer, liver cancer, and pancreatic cancer. The sessions today represent an excellent opportunity for the public to hear from the experts actively involved in development of these programs, get a deeper understanding of the potential applications of the PXS-5505 molecule, and understand why both Bioshares and Taylor Collison rate Pharmaxis as buy with significant undervaluation. Any one of these three development programs is worth significant attention, and today you'll hear from experts in a Q&A panel over the course of the next 2 hours, which is going to translate the science into real-world meaningful information that can help you with your investment decisions. First, we will deal with myelofibrosis, which is bone marrow cancer, and we'll hear from Gabriella Hobbs on that. Second, we will hear about the hepatocellular cancer, which is liver cancer, and Dr. Paul Bouchard will present that, and then pancreatic cancer from Dr. Tom Cox. I'd encourage you to stay to the end of the event, because any one of these programs is worthy of your full attention, and throughout I'll be curating any questions from the audience that you can put in the Q&A box, and ensure that we cover as many of those as possible. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Wolfgang Jarolimek as the head of Pharmaxis Drug Discovery. He's had 20 years in drug discovery and 30 peer-reviewed articles. Previously a director of GlaxoSmithKline Center for Excellence in Verona, Italy, Wolfgang is going to explain how Pharmaxis, a company with existing revenues from cystic fibrosis and asthma products, has somehow managed to become the global leader in lysyl oxidase, or LOX, drug development. Over to you, Wolfgang.
Hi, good morning and good afternoon. I would really warmly welcome you from the laboratories of Pharmaxis here in Frenchs Forest in the rainy Sydney. As you've heard, I'm a pharmacist by training. And after that, I went to Merck Sharp & Dohme, GlaxoSmithKline for 12 years before I joined Pharmaxis about 11 years ago. I'm leading the drug discovery group here, and the group consists about of 14 people. Half of them are chemists, half of them are biologists, and we also cover preclinical development as well as anything related to the product manufacturing early on in phase 1 and the quality around that one. So since I joined the group, we have been working on amine oxidases, because that is a field with a very small family, yet it is very rich in druggable targets. And we have been lucky to bring 5 clinical candidates forward, and there actually are various opportunities within this amine oxidase class. We have started a long time ago with actually a pure SSAO inhibitor, PXS-4728, and that is right now still in the planning phase for neuroinflammation. Beyond that one, we've really thought that that class is actually an opportunity to work further, and we work on other dual inhibitors for SSAO plus another activity, which are very unique in its kind, but at the same time, they're all working very well in inflammatory diseases where that enzyme plays a major role. However, so really the discussion today is about lysyl oxidases. So lysyl oxidases are a family that are really at the end point of any fibrotic diseases. The reason why we have focused on these ones is that we can make mechanism-based inhibitors that really irreversibly inhibit the enzyme, Yet at the same time, we have an excellent selectivity profile over other aminoxidases because we have such a platform available to make a very thorough screen in these ones. What you hear today, the 3 next talks actually is a product of our long-lasting collaborations with these academic groups, because as we are the leader in this field, many academics approach us, and we have very good collaborations in driving the science, because we all believe that it really makes a difference if you change the fibrotic environment in the solid cancers, or if you change fibrosis overall, and targeting the last step in any of these fibrotic diseases, which is actually the cross-linking of collagen, is probably the most powerful way in which you can actually interact with such a fibrosis. So as I said, this lab has now produced many of these inhibitors, and what you're hearing today is a summary of the pan-LOX inhibitor that we have used for systemic indications. And the next seminar, you will then hear about the topical dosage form that we are using for skin scarring as such. So with this one, probably Gary wants to talk to you a little bit more about the clinical development, which is ongoing with PXS-5505.
All right. Thank you very much, Wolfgang. Next up, as Wolfgang mentioned, is Gary Phillips, the CEO of Pharmaxis, with more than 30 years operational experience in big pharma and biotech, and nearly 10 years leading Pharmaxis. Perhaps you could summarize the clinical development and clinical trial program that we're going to hear about from the clinicians who are coming up in the rest of this session. Gary.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Wolfgang, for the introduction as well. So, you know, we've organized this event today because Pharmaxis has reached a critical point in its life cycle and the development of these particular products. This seminar this morning, as Wolfgang said, we're going to hear from the clinicians who are involved in the different programs and collaborations we had, and then we have another event on Thursday where we'll focus on our other drug, PXS-6302, which is involved in skin scarring. So Pharmaxis is a clinical stage drug development company. And you've heard from Wolfgang that we really have targeted fibrosis and through fibrosis, also cancer, with first in class, what we believe to be also best in class small molecule drugs. All of the indications which you're going to hear about are in diseases where there's a very high unmet need, where patients are currently quite poorly served, and therefore also goes a significant commercial opportunity for companies that can actually help these patients. We've been a global leader in this one particular area because we've invested in a multi-year program. So I think quite unusually compared to many other biotechs, certainly Australian biotechs that you might listen to. You know, as you've seen with Wolfgang, with the laboratory in the background, we are a fully functioning drug development company. We invent our own drugs and we take them through from the early stages where we're designing the molecules right the way through into the preclinical studies where we validate the mechanism of action, and then through into the clinic. So the reason for, I guess, organizing this today was that we've actually got 4 studies planned for this year. They're either started to recruit already or are about to start recruitment. And that presents really good near-term value opportunities for investors if you're understanding what we're doing and tracking where we're going. So those 4 trials, the first 2 we're going to listen to in detail this morning, featuring 5505. The first of those is in myelofibrosis, a rare kind of cancer of the bone marrow. The market there, I mean, existing drugs which are only symptomatic, is already worth about $1 billion a year. So clearly there's a very large addressable market. And the study that we're running there is a phase 2. It had an IND which is approved by the FDA. And it's in patients who are intolerant to the current standard of care. And Dr. Gabby Hobbs will be talking to you about that study and the use of JAK inhibitors in myelofibrosis. Now, this is an orphan disease. So this is a study which isn't necessarily easy to recruit. We have to recruit 24 patients. and that one's recruiting now. So we have centers that are open in Australia and South Korea and now Taiwan, and centers in the US due to open shortly. So as I said, that study is ongoing, it's recruiting. We aim to have it fully recruited by mid-year, and then data from that study by the end of this calendar year. The second of the studies with 5505 is in hepatocellular carcinoma, a form of liver cancer. The market there is even bigger. So $7 billion, rising all the time. Hepatocellular carcinoma is, I think, the fourth largest cause of mortality amongst the cancers at the moment. And we're working with the group in Rochester, and you'll hear from Paul Bouchard, who's a doctor in the Rochester Clinic, who's been intimately involved with the preclinical work there and has worked in a collaboration with Wolfgang for a number of years. That's a phase 1C dose escalation study. So we are doing it in patients. And importantly, in this one, we're going in first line. So this is in newly diagnosed patients with liver cancer who can't be treated by surgery, so you can't remove the cancer. And we're going on top of existing standard of care. That will look for 18 patients, and we're expecting the first patient there to be recruited by in the next quarter. And we would have data from that by the end of next year. So two really important studies. You'll also hear about pancreatic cancer, which is another opportunity for the company going forward. But all those two studies are obviously in areas where the market potential is high. The unmet need for patients is extremely high. And we see a real opportunity there for the company to make a difference to patients, and therefore creates an opportunity for investors at this particular time, where with these two studies that we'll get to a point where we show both safety and some early signs of efficacy. And with those two things in hand, the company can then really go onwards with this drug 5505, which I think has potential in a lot of cancers. But clearly these two studies are the important first steps that we need to take along the way. The other drug there, 6302, is a topical agent. It's used in the treatment of scars on the skin. And if you're interested in those, then I highly recommend that you register and join for the second of these R&D showcase webinars, which we'll be holding on Thursday. At that meeting, we'll have Professor Fiona Wood and Dr. Mark Fear from the University of Western Australia talking about the work that they've done with us in scarring models and the studies that they're currently recruiting and ones that they're planning. So with that, I'll finish that introduction and hand back to Michael.
Thank you very much, Gary. There's some pretty exciting near-term milestones there. Particularly, I note the open-label nature of the first study there, myelofibrosis, means early data will be available.